It's November 26th, 1977, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
If you're in your early 50s or older and grew up in the part of the UK served by what was then the Southern Television Network, and you found yourself watching the news on this day back in 1977, you might well have witnessed a peculiar incident. Midway through the evening news, your TV signal would have wobbled slightly and then been taken over by Vrillon, an alien visitor representing a body called the Ashtar Galactic Command, who had come here with a rather special message for you.
Yeah, so this was a broadcast intrusion incident. There have been many of them over the years, and it was far more common and easy to do when TV stations were operated on analog rather than digital. Basically, if you had the right equipment, you could interfere with transmissions in certain circumstances. And that is what happened on Southern Television on this day for about 5 or 6 minutes. The only issue is that we don't have any confirmed recordings. There are, if you look on YouTube, there are like videos that are claiming to be a recording of the interruption, but they're not. They're reenactments. So recreations of the actual event. So the only information that we have on what exactly Vrillon had to tell us came from the next day's newspapers. But I'm assuming that those are from people's memories or people writing it down as it was happening, because people didn't have video recorders then in their homes. And also, now I'm thinking about it, I feel like if the channel was making tapes for the archive of its own broadcast, it would be at its own end. So if there was someone interfering with the signal, they wouldn't be capturing that.
That's right. To get an accurate recording, someone would have had to have pressed record when it was being broadcast from a receiver that was receiving it, and who the hell was recording Southern News at 5:10 on a random Sunday in 1977 when video machines were incredibly expensive. Yeah, all that's true, but we've got a good idea of roughly what was said, and it was this. I mean, I'm not going to read the whole thing because it would literally take the whole podcast, but just to give you an idea. This is the voice of Vrillon, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the skies. We speak to you now in peace and wisdom, as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. I don't know about you, but even though this is like a mock religious text, I find it difficult to read like real ones. Do you know what I mean? Like the words are just a bit treacly after a while. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your world, so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on our worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in the Great Awakening as the planet passes into the new age of Aquarius. And then it goes on, like another 5 times longer than that.
And the evils that Vrillon was specifically warning about were money and nuclear weapons. And it's funny because, you know, it's fundamentally kind of a message of peace, but apparently, at least according to newspaper reports from the time, it prompted thousands of TV viewers to frantically begin phoning the police. Again, there's some skepticism around this that's warranted by the fact that the police only record having sent one car around to calm a panicking pensioner, which doesn't sound like sort of a mass panic event. I guess because this was also not like the biggest of broadcasters who was interrupted.
So I know that people were more naive then, and I know that it was still on ITV in that region, and that's still a big deal. It was the first or second most popular channel. However, you know, even with a moderate degree of skepticism, which you could attribute to even the pensioners of the southern region, you'd say to yourself, wouldn't you, okay, if this was a real alien who had the technology to signal jam, why would they talk only to people in Southampton and Dover? That just seems improbable. Yeah. Why wouldn't they take the BBC News at 10?
You'd flip over to one of the other channels, not least of all to get some better content.
We don't know why an alien overlord would have chosen Southern Television, but we do know why a hoaxer may have chosen Southern Television, which is that they had quite a unique setup where, rather than having their content beamed directly to them, it was being transmitted via another transmitter. So the original source was the Row Ridge transmitting station. However, it was then sort of pinging off a transmitter in Hannington, which I think was in North Hampshire. And so what had happened was somebody, maybe an alien, maybe not,
maybe a nerd, just saying,
had set up an unauthorized transmitter, and the signal was relatively weak because of this sort of pinging that was happening, rather than it being transmitted by landline, which was more common. So someone had just rocked up with a transmitter, basically put it next to the transmitter and turned it up to max, and had just interrupted the train of transmission.
And yet the Independent Broadcasting Authority's assessment of what went on was that the hoax would have taken a considerable amount of technical know-how to pull off. And I think that, it's not like you could have just sort of turned up with the kind of equipment that we all have about our person and done something like this. So it was someone who knew a little bit about broadcast, again, or an alien. It might have been that.
An alien with a Southern English accent.
Yeah, but that's the other funny thing, that they've never actually caught the person who did it.
And I imagine they don't have many detectives still working on this case.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about it, isn't it? Because like everything else actually is, I think, a little bit lame. Like when you hear what was said and you know, it didn't seem to really have a point to it. But actually, one good thing is that because it didn't seem to have a point to it, apart from a general kind of imagined by John Lennon, why don't we all be nice to each other message, is you can't quite work out what's the joke. Like, is it satire? Mm-hmm. Is it a straight up prank? Is it someone who really does have a religious message, but over and above that, they have the technology to signal jam and they want to showcase their skills? It's not like some of the pranks that American listeners will remember, the Max Headroom one in the 80s, where a guy randomly like signal jammed American TV stations and then rolled around some corrugated iron whilst holding a can of Pepsi and pretended to be Max Headroom, and it was considered to be really sinister and weird. But
it is really scary.
But it's, I
rewatched it today because I thought it might come up, and I honestly had to really grit my teeth. And I was watching it in broad daylight. There's no way I would have watched it at night. Oh, it's so creepy.
But it means nothing. Like, it obviously is just a drunk person.
That's the worst part.
Well, right. Yeah. So what I'm saying is good about the Southern one is at least it leaves you with question marks. We're like, no one wants responsibility for this. They're just going to do this one thing and then shut up about it for 50 years.
And maybe we should get rid of nuclear weapons and abolish money and be cool with each other.
Yeah, it's a pretty benign message. The weird thing is that we were describing the extraterrestrial being as Vrillon, but that apparently first appeared in a 1981 book about British television. At the time, some contemporary reports said that the person or being was named Ashtar. Apparently, it was a very distorted voice, so it could have just been that people weren't quite picking up on what they were saying. But the idea that they identified themselves as being a representative of Ashtar Galactic Command, apparently the News of the World and the Daily Mail reported it as the Ashdown Galactic Command, which seems rather less impressive. Ashdown being a historical area of the Berkshire Downs, which was part of the Southern Television broadcast area.
Hey, you got to run your galactic empire from somewhere. I mean, one of the theories lending weight to the idea that it was Vrillon rather than Ashtar was that some people think that the broadcast was done by a Raelian, and the Raelians were this slightly peculiar UFO church founded just 4 years before this by a guy called Claude Vrillon. So some people think that this was someone saying Vrillon and it was a bit misheard, and that's where we get to Vrillon.
But the Ashtar Galactic Command was definitely not something that this hoaxer had just made up. It's a really familiar term to ufologists. It's part of this whole, what's really it's a real rabbit hole, but it's this complex mythology / spiritual doctrine. It started in 1952. A guy called George Van Tassel, he was one of the earliest UFO contactees, the people that think they've been contacted by aliens. He claimed to receive telepathic messages from an extraterrestrial being named Ashtar, who was mostly warning about the dangers of the hydrogen bomb. So there's a bit of continuity with the messages.
Yeah, that's cool. That is cooler than the Max Headroom thing then, isn't it? That's exactly what I'm saying. It's got that texture to it. I didn't know that. Rabbit hole is the right word, isn't it? Now, it's so easy to fall down on the internet, all of these holes. But actually then, if you were a Fortean watching this, and it just came on your analog telly, it would tickle your fancy, wouldn't it? Because it all seems a bit tame and boring now, because we can access a wealth of homemade content at the touch of a button, including this show. But then, it must have been really shocking to see something raw and quite clearly unauthorised on your analogue media source, using words that the media would never use, that you understood what they meant. It must have felt a bit like that bit in Trainspotting when Dale Winton starts talking to Renton through the telly.
I mean, I think it would still feel quite shocking if it happened today, except that you'd probably think that it was some sort of error with your technology.
But you'd go straight on Twitter, wouldn't you? You'd look at the hashtag and find out who it was. And you'd be like, oh, it's a promotional thing for whoever.
I think that's right, that you'd go, are other people seeing this? But if it turned out that other people were seeing it, then you would think, what is going on here? And there's been quite a lot of transmission interruptions over the years, and, quite a lot of them involve people hacking into TV networks and broadcasting pornography to channels that otherwise wouldn't be pornographic.
There was that time on Jazz FM when the producer accidentally played out gay porn. Do you remember that? It's a few years ago.
You know when you mix up your jazz tab and your gay porn tab?
Tomorrow.
A ring of communist sympathisers and infiltrators within the US government.
Ditch the ads and get a Sunday episode when you join Club Retrospectors. Patreon.com/retrospectors.